If you're learning Hindi, let's be real, there's one thing that probably drives you crazy more than anything else: grammatical gender. It can feel totally random, super confusing, but you absolutely have to know it. So in this explainer, we are going to crack the code and finally make it all make sense.
So, let's just start with the question that gets everybody. You learn the word for room, kamra, and find out it's masculine. Then you learn the word for language, bhasha, and it's feminine. You're thinking, wait, what? A room doesn't have a gender. How does that make any sense at all? Well, let's dive in and unpack that.
Okay, so to get this, the very first thing you need to do is make a huge mental shift. You kind of have to forget what you know about English grammar for a second. We're about to step into a world that plays by a totally different set of rules. A world where there's no such thing as it.
And this is rule number one. You have to burn this into your brain. In Hindi, there are only two genders. That's it, just two. There's no third option, no neutral category for things. Every single noun, and I mean everything, from a person to a table to an idea, has to be one of two things, either masculine or feminine.
And you can see that difference right here. In English, we have this nice, comfy neuter category, our word it, that we use for pretty much all non-living things. But in Hindi, that whole category is just gone. It doesn't exist. Everything gets sorted into either the masculine or feminine pile. And that right there is where all the confusion starts.
So how in the world do you figure out which pile a word goes into? Well, the good news is you don't have to guess every single time. While there aren't any perfect 100% laws, there are some incredibly helpful patterns. Think of them like cheat codes. And it almost always comes down to how the word sounds at the end.
All right, let's break down the most common cheat code. For a ton of masculine nouns, you're going to be listening for an ah sound at the end. See the example? One room is kamra, but when you have multiple rooms, it becomes kamre. That shift from ah to a is a massive clue. Now for feminine nouns, you want to listen for a long e sound. One girl is ladki, and a group of girls, ladkiyan. That e to eon switch is your classic feminine pattern.
Let's do another one just to really lock this in. The Hindi word for a promise is wada. Hear that? Wada. That ah sound is your big masculine giveaway. So it follows the pattern perfectly. If you're talking about more than one promise, it becomes wade. Once you start listening for that sound, you'll start hearing it everywhere. I promise.
And here's that feminine pattern one more time. A single sweet treat is mithai. It ends with that long e sound. So if you've got a whole box of them, they become mithaiyan. You see, it's the exact same e to ya pattern we saw with ladki. Once you get your ear tuned to these sounds, spotting genders becomes so much less of a guessing game. Now I know what you're thinking. It can't possibly be that simple, right? And you're right. No language follows its own rules perfectly. So what happens when you run into a word that breaks the pattern? Let's talk about the exceptions, because they are going to pop up. Honestly, this is the best way to think about it. The patterns are a great guide, but some words, they just play by their own rules. It's not that the cheat codes are wrong. It's just that there are always a few rebels in the mix.
And here are some of the most common rule breakers you'll meet. These are all masculine nouns that end in that ah sound, but they don't change in the plural. Notice the theme here, though? A lot of them are about family or respected roles, like pita for father, chacha for uncle, or raja for king. These guys, you just kind of have to memorize.
So what do you do when the pattern doesn't seem to fit and you can't remember if it's an exception? You need a safety net, right? A surefire, foolproof way to get the right answer every single time.
And here it is. Let me introduce you to your new best friend, the website shabdkosh.com. It's an English to Hindi dictionary, but it has one killer feature that is a total game changer for learners. Right next to every noun, it tells you its gender, with a little M for masculine or F for feminine. It completely takes away all the guesswork.
And using it could not be easier. Seriously, you just go to the site, type in the English word you're curious about, like room, you find the Hindi translation, kamra, and you just look right next to it. Boom! You'll see that little M telling you it's masculine. Problem solved.
Okay, so let's quickly recap our game plan. First, the biggest thing to remember is there's no it in Hindi. Every single thing is masculine or feminine. Second, your first move should always be to listen for those common endings, that ah sound for masculine and e for feminine. Third, always be on the lookout for those exceptions, especially words for family members. And finally, your ultimate safety net, when in doubt, don't guess. Just use a tool like shabdkosh.com and know for sure.
So you've done it. You have officially cracked the first part of the code. You now have a solid strategy to figure out the gender of pretty much any noun in Hindi. But the real question is, are you ready for the next level? Are you ready to find out why this is so incredibly important and how a noun's gender goes on to change the verbs, the adjectives, absolutely everything else in a sentence?